future travel.
American Airlines booking Carter. How can I help today?
Hi, I was told that I need to check in for flight, check my luggage 2 hours before flight time. And if I'm less than 2 hours, I'm there an hour before flight time, I cannot check in. That's correct. Okay, because I tried to check a bag in LAX Sunday, and it's going to tell me I was less than 2 hours before flight time. And you're going to check my bag. 90 minutes should be enough.
cornerofthegalaxy.com.
Okay.
2 hours before departure?
Yes, correct. Okay.
It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman. LA Galaxy losing 2-0 to Orlando City. We're going to get you through that game, although it seems like a rinse and repeat of a whole bunch of games earlier this season. We're going to talk about the upcoming news and, of course, the Galaxy facing Colorado here at the end of the day. Some other little breaking bits and things in there. And, of course, Kevin is away from home and was on a hot mic for some of his calls, so American Airlines at the opening, if you were on the live show part of it. But we're going to bring him in and welcome him back. We're glad to have him as always, and we hope that for once, just once maybe, he learns how to use his mute button. Maybe he knows how to do some other. We'll figure it out. That's basically what. Kevin, how's it going, buddy?
No, I'm not going to learn any of that. And we did agree I look like Mr. Fredrickson, right?
You do. Yeah, I was going to play the up theme, but pretty sure that one gets copyrighted every single time.
Yeah, even Mrs. Panda, who's here with me in Sarasota, she weighed in about how I look like Mr. Fredrickson. It's a talking dog.
It's not the worst thing in the world. There's other. You could look like a lot of really bad people, and you just look like one of the saddest Disney movies ever to be, but also one of the better ones, I would say. So,
by the way, I know obviously we're going to talk about Saturday's game. I was not in Orlando. I did not watch the game at home. I watched it on my phone because I was at Interpride, which is it was a fundraising gala held by Interpride. Sophie invited me, and I sat at Sophie's table, and I saw Sophie go up. She presented an award. She was in her element with a lot of other sad Arsenal fans at this event. But it was a fundraising event to support the LGBTQ plus community worldwide. It was a really good event, and I just want you to know before you see the check that I did make a rather generous donation from the corporate Corner of the Galaxy corporate bank account. Okay. But it's good. It's good because it's tax deductible, and we know taxes are a really big topic around Galaxy these days. So. That's all. It's all good.
What was the? It was it's Schitt's Creek, right? Where he goes, we'll write it off. He goes, excuse me, do you even know what that means? It's like, yeah, we'll just write it off. That's what I feel like. We'll just write it off. It's fine. Just write it off. No problem.
Well, I thought since taxes were, like I said, a big topic in Galaxy Land, that this was the time to do it.
There you go. The drama continues into Monday as it goes. The many winding and twisting roads of the soap opera that is the LA Galaxy right now. The loss on Saturday night. You got to watch it. I didn't watch the game until this morning. I want to tell you, it's an interesting perspective, Kevin, to see everybody complain and to see everybody and not having watched the game. But I obviously got tagged in a lot of comments on Twitter, and then there's the Discord, so I get to see everybody complaining.
People were worried what happened to you because you hadn't been live. You generally live tweet games, and you didn't live tweet, and you didn't have the press conference up immediately afterwards. And I personally got a lot of people reached out to me and said, "Is Josh okay? Where's Josh?
Yeah,
did he give up on the Galaxy already?"
Yeah, sometimes. No. For my mental health, I think it's best if I step away from the Galaxy at different times for sure. No, I was our train club had a meet, which is a long-standing tradition throughout live steaming from all the way from England all the way over to the United States, and so we invite people from other clubs to come out and run their trains on our layout. It's a fun way to to sort of go around that. You want to hear a tragic story? So I don't know if anybody, and I'll just do it quickly. A tragic story. There was a guy, he has been working on the steam engine, I would imagine, for years. All right. You work on these things. They cost you $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to build. You have to build them yourself. You have to press the parts together. You have to machine. You have to do all this labor of love. So he gets out there and they pressurize the boiler to make sure it works. It passes. He gets out there and something breaks. Okay, that happens all the time. He's like, I'll take it home. We'll be back tomorrow. On the way home, it's in the back of his pickup truck, and they go around a corner, and it tilts over, and it crushes a little piece of it. No, this isn't the bad part.
Oh.
This isn't the bad part. So he's like, it's fine. I'm going to glue it back together. It's not a problem. I'm going to work on it in the morning. I'll bring it back in the afternoon, the whole deal. He's working on it on his bench at home, and it falls off the bench and hits the ground. So this guy's been working on this thing for years. It finally goes out to run, and then 1, it falls over in the truck, and 2, it falls off the lift. And that's all of this time and all this stuff that happens. So I just thought that's really what working on trains is like for most people.
But you brought up an interesting question really quickly. You can lift it by yourself into a pickup truck, or you have to get other guys to help? Those look like they're really heavy.
Yeah, I mean, some of the engines weigh 2,000 pounds. Some of them weigh 12. Yeah, you sort of push it into the truck. You get it, you line it up, and you push it off the little lift and stuff like that. So anyway. But yeah, so I was busy doing the meet, and so I was trying to watch it while I was riding on a train. It worked for about 10 minutes, and then I had to do other things, so I couldn't do it. But the interesting perspective comes from, at least in my opinion, comes from the fact that you see all these things, and everybody has their opinions of things, and I saw stuff that stuck out in my mind before I watched the game was Brugman sucks, Douglas Costa sucks, Greg Vanney doesn't know what he's doing, the midfield's nothing without Riqui Puig. The defense was horrible. I'm going through all these things. I'm like, wow, it must have been a really bad game. I watched that game. Yeah, the Galaxy were missing Riqui Puig. I mean, everybody knows that. But having said that, it wasn't. It's a very typical LA Galaxy game of this year. That's the frustrating part, right? Is that we've seen this type of performance, this ability to be semi-half dangerous, not put balls in the back of the net, and concede goals. And once conceding goals for this LA Galaxy team, you might as well write it off. If the Galaxy go down, and there's not even really a history of winning games to really prove this out, but if the Galaxy give up the first goal, they're going to lose the game. Almost exclusively in 2023, that has been the situation that has happened. And there's some real sort of damaging trends that are going on that Kevin may or may not put Greg Vanney on the hot seat. It's certainly something we can talk about.
And we're going to talk about that. But some of the stuff you said, I think Costa did suck. I think Costa had a horrible game.
Yeah.
And when you put later in the show, when you put your little rhombus diagram up there, you'll see how much the passing network really missed Riqui Puig. But I'll go over the math, which I hate math, but I do this, for every podcast. So where are the Galaxy now? The second to last in MLS in points, second to last in wins. Only Sporting Kansas City has fewer wins. The Galaxy have 1. Sporting Kansas City has 0. Third from the bottom in goals at 7, behind only Sporting Kansas City and Colorado. Fourth from the bottom in goal differential, -7. They've been shut out 4 times in 9 games. Mm-hmm. They've scored multiple goals just once. And now they must average 1.44 points per game over the rest of the season to reach 42 points, which, as we've talked about before, is the average over the last 4 complete seasons for them to finish 9th and make that the Don Garber Memorial 1-game playoff with the 8th place team. They've done that twice since 2016. They've got 1.44 points in a season. Now they have to do it over the last, 25 games to do that. Oh, and by the way, with this loss, Greg Vanney now has a losing record as Galaxy coach. Overall, he's 28, 29, and 20 in his 2+ seasons. So Greg Vanney goes below 500 for the first time.
Interesting. I mean, it's all you brought up the shutouts. I had the graphic for that. I also think so. They've been shut out 4 times, which is concerning. 2 of those games were 0-0 games. They've also shut out an opponent 3 times in the first 9 games, right? So been shut out 4 times, shut out the opponent 3 times. 2 of those were also in the 0-0 draws. So the 2 of those were no goal games.
So what do you think of that? I mean, that's a really good stat, I think, that they got shut out twice and still managed to get a point from that game. Is that a good thing that says, yes, they're even in a game when they don't score, they're able to salvage a point? Or is that a bad stat that says these are games when their defense was so good, the other team didn't get a goal, yet the best they could get out of the match was 1 point. Where do you come down on that?
No, I mean, I just think it provides context. I don't think it's good. I mean, the other part of that stat is that 3 out of the 9 games the Galaxy have allowed 3 goals in the game. So like so you lose 3-2, you allow 3 goals, you score 2, that's great. You lose 3-0, you don't score any goals, it's 0-0. Yeah, you get a point. One of those points was against SKC, right? And so that game's horrible. I think the other one was against Vancouver at home. Wasn't that the other one, the 0-0? I can't remember if that was. I think that was that one.
I think the Vancouver game was 1-1, wasn't it?
It might have been.
No, 0-0 was Portland. It was in Portland.
That's what it was. So I mean, okay, yeah. The problem is Sporting Kansas City is generally accepted. Everybody would be, Kevin, talking about the Galaxy right now, about how horrible the Galaxy are, and in some ways they are. The people are talking. I'm not justifying the Galaxy are justified by where they sit in the table right now. But everybody would be talking about how horrible the Galaxy are, except that Sporting Kansas City are an actual dumpster fire. So the Galaxy, at least, I think, have some talented players, and they say Johnny Russell was lost for words about how to fix it. He goes, I don't know how you fix it. He's like, we're not even a shadow of the team that we were. I don't know how you fix that, because they should technically be better. And Peter Vermees, longtime Peter Vermees, who's their head guy over there, right? He's in charge of everything. He's one of the last sort of remaining holdouts between him and Bruce Arena, and Greg Vanney really are have their hands in everything. But Peter Vermees is basically looking at having to step away from the coach and possibly being a GM type player, and bringing in a coach, because I don't think Sporting Kansas City is going to be able to weather this particular storm. So that's just to put that in perspective, is that the Galaxy are really bad, but they're not as bad as Sporting Kansas City, which is the reason that they haven't been dumped on by the league probably as much as they should be. But they were leading up to the LAFC game, and I think that bought them, the front office, and everybody a little bit of time. And then the Austin game buys another little bit of time. But, going all the way to Orlando is always going to be a difficult game, and I'm not surprised they lost it. I'm sorry. That's especially not with Riqui Puig.
It's their longest road trip so far this part of the season. By the way, Bruce Arena at 71 once again leads the Supporters' Shield standings with New England. It's just amazing. You talk about Peter Vermees, the dean of MLS coaches, as far as consistency with one team. The team is struggling. I'm not involved with a lot of Sporting Kansas City social networks and things, but I'm not hearing a lot of calls for Vermees to step down, because they were chanting Vermees out at the game. They want him gone. The fans in Sporting Kansas City are done. That was my weak attempt at a segue into. We are hearing that about Greg Vanney. There has been a lot of social media talk about Vanney out. Should Vanney go? And so you and we talked earlier in the week about this. And I sort of put together 2 scenarios. First of all, personally, I don't think Greg Vanney should be forced out. I don't think the time is right yet. If things continue, all bets are off. But I think Vanney it can turn it around. But anyway, I'll go through the scenarios. I think the arguments. Okay, why should Vanney stay? Well, he took over a terrible team, and he's had to try to rebuild it with a dysfunctional front office. Right now, everyone agrees on that. We're changing that a little bit with Will Kuntz coming in. The sanction from the Pavone signing cost the Galaxy $2 million in cash and allocation money, cost them a summer transfer window. That signing, that has really hurt Vanney's attempt to turn the team around here. He's had to remake the academy system and build a scouting system from scratch. He's had to do that in less than 3 seasons. All these things have taken time to implement. And then also pulling the string on Vanney now, I think the Galaxy made a habit in this downstretch of I think, forcing coaches out too early. We saw it with Anafo. I think we definitely saw it with Anafo. I think maybe we saw it with Ziggy as well. I think Vanney, given his resume, deserves more time. And then the last part is the number one reason that Vanney should not go anywhere right now is because there's nobody out there that's clearly better than him that would take that job. And so why now the reasons to sack Vanney? Why should we get rid of Vanney? Team has a losing record since he came aboard. He rebuilt the team in the first season, right? Made the playoffs in the second season. That momentum clearly has not carried over. Team has regressed. That's on the coach. Many of his personnel decisions have failed. I know there's some that that he's going to be credited with: Riqui Puig, Bergman, Cáceres. But when in that first season, remember the French connection: Cabral, Grancière, Raveloson, Koulibaly. Only Koulibaly is still here, and he's not even playing anymore. So that whole French connection thing failed miserably. And then Costa, who is another big signing, a DP, a guy Vanney really didn't want, but he, I think, has been mostly a bust too. I think the team this year has shown an alarming lack of discipline. When you talk about Costa and Cáceres getting the red cards, Joveljic leaving the pitch early, having to be forced back to the bench by Raheem Edwards, that to me betrays something in the makeup of the team, that there's maybe a little lack of discipline, a lack of camaraderie in that dressing room. The organization has not regained the culture, the Galaxy culture that was Vanney brought in to bring back. And then finally, we talked about in the first scenario, there's not a clear, better coach to replace him. Well, if Jesse Marsch gets the U.S. national team job, which a lot of people rumored that he will, that makes Greg Berhalter available. Greg Berhalter, former national team coach, took Columbus to MLS Cup final, has a Galaxy pedigree, played for the Galaxy, got his coaching start under Bruce Arena with the Galaxy, understands the team, the demands, the culture. If Greg Berhalter became available, you can make the argument he's better than Greg Vanney. And now you have an heir apparent. And then finally, a coaching move, if it is made, should only be made if it can be done independent of Chris Klein. We've seen, the Galaxy, because then he becomes, for Klein, Vanney then becomes the scapegoat. We've seen that before. Under Chris Klein since 2017, we've had 5 coaches, we've had 4 general managers, and Chris Klein has used those as a scapegoat each time. So if there were to be a coaching change, it would have to somehow be done independent of the president. I don't know how you do that, but I don't think Chris Klein should have his fingerprints on this move if it happens. So there you are, the pro and the con. I don't think I think he definitely deserves to stay out the season, unless we're talking about one win in the middle of July. Then maybe things change.
Yeah. I mean, where do we go? Where do we attack? I think I ultimately lie on you can't get rid of Greg Vanney unless Chris Klein goes with him at the same time, because the person making the decision will be Chris Klein again. And it seems like that ship has sailed, especially for, as we look at the LA Galaxy standings, making the playoffs right now, while not it's impossible. It's a difficult road, as you pointed out, 1.44 points per game, here on out, in order to get that 9th, 8th spot, to slide yourself in. To me, that means that Chris Klein's promise of, hey, if we don't make the playoffs, if we don't advance and play us the Western Conference, it feels like it almost comes to an end sooner. And so could there be wholesale change? And we were talking about this before the LAFC game too, right? Again, the performance against LAFC, while was spirited, and the Galaxy looked, decent in that game to the point where you thought maybe they had a chance to win it. And then they go and they beat Austin. So you sort of bought some reprieve. You bought a little bit of breathing room for a second. But then you go to Orlando, you really do look flat. And we'll talk about that game here in a second. You really do look flat. You're now back in that same situation again. So what happens whenever Colorado comes into town? Colorado is a game that the Galaxy should win. So it's like all of a sudden there's all this pressure building on every single game. And whether you want to put that in with, Klein saying, if we make the playoffs, that there's pressure there. Whether you want to put that into something where you're saying, if you don't win, then you're going to get fired, Greg Vanney, whether that pressure is there. And then you have the fan boycott, so that pressure is there. There's a lot of pressure on these players. There's a lot of pressure on this team. I'm not saying it's not deserved, right, in a lot of ways. Quite honestly, the Galaxy could have just had a better start, even a lackadaisical start where you win a couple, you lose a couple, and you're sort of battling around 500 for the start of the season, puts them in a position basically to do anything that they want. But that's not the case. The Galaxy are very quickly running out of, and it's crazy to say, they haven't even played 10 games yet, Kevin. They haven't played 10 games yet. They're not even a third of the way through the season, but you're looking at a record that has been so poor that there's a very good chance that they do not recover from this into any sort of meaningful way for the rest of the season. The start could be so bad that we're seeing, and it's the second worst start in Galaxy history. Across anything, doesn't matter what. 97 was the worst start.
But a lot of those games were draws that they wound up losing.
Right.
Yeah. So, but the thing with it, what you're talking about, the record is really bad, and you can, as we did, you can break it down statistically, and it looks even worse. But on top of that, the team just hasn't looked good.
No.
It's not like you can say, which Greg has tried to do, Greg Vanney has tried to do with some justification, but not totally, where he said, that the calls went against us, refs, really hurt us. The teams looked really bad.
I mean, here's the thing. Outside of the Houston game, I haven't seen just a really crappy Galaxy team. Again, it doesn't feel like 2017. 2017 was a wooden spoon year, and you could feel it, right? You could feel it burning. You could feel it while you were running through most of it. There was this impending sense of doom. And I just feel that eventually something corrects here for the LA Galaxy, because they aren't as bad as this. But one of the big things that they're going to have to figure out is Douglas Costa. And that, to me, seems to indicate that Douglas Costa shouldn't be on the field anymore. Let me get to some super chats. Chris said $5 super chat and says that MLS Power Ranking at number 25 said we got a look at the Galaxy minus Puig. They're every bit as bad as the scoreline indicates. The Galaxy culture is broken. Here's the thing. If you take away the best player, your best DP, and he has been, Riqui Puig, since he joined the team. And remember, the Galaxy haven't played a game without Riqui Puig since he came and joined the team. That hasn't happened. He's played every minute of every game from here on out. So I do expect that the compass in this particular case, and he is their compass. I'll say this from the game that I watched, Kevin. I saw how many times the Galaxy were putting themselves into pressure situations where Riqui Puig usually bails them out. Right? Like they pass the ball into the center of the field, and then Puig dribbles around three guys in order to break the pressure and sort of open. How many times they put a ball into the center of the field expecting, Gaston Brugman to sort of dance around people? He's not the same player, right? And then you had all the focus on Brugman as well, which he's never had. He's never had all the focus be on him because Riqui has played every minute of every game since he's been here, right? So you look at all those things, and it's I understand the harsh adjustment. Having said that, MLS and their power rankings can shove them where the sun don't shine. They are usually so disconnected from actual reality. Power rankings really should be a measure of who is the hot team, not who do we expect to be good in a while. And they never do that. So throw the power rankings out. I don't care. 25, sure. I mean, quite honestly, the Galaxy stats and their position on the table indicate where they should be. You don't need power rankings. The table tells you where guys are supposed to be, right? But the thing that MLS gets wrong about their power rankings is at the end of the season, Kevin, it could be a 13th place team that's on a 7-game winning streak that's just tearing people apart, and they should be number one in the power rankings. And that would never happen with MLS's power rankings. So,
well, but there is some truth to the fact that the Galaxy really missed Riqui Puig, and I think every other team in MLS, every other team the Galaxy are going to play, they looked at that and said, well, clearly the way to beat the Galaxy is to take Riqui Puig out of the game. Now, if he's on the field, you got to find a way to take him out of the game by neutralizing him, which LAFC tried to do in the playoffs last year. I think word's gotten out that you need to be physical with him. Riqui, was suspended for yellow card accumulation, which means he's starting to fight back and get a little frustrated. I think we may see that trend go forward. I think teams are going to try to mark him very closely, get a little physical, maybe a little dirty, try to get him to retaliate, take him out of the game, because when he is not on the field or when he is not concentrating on playing, the Galaxy are not nearly as good.
Well, I mean, listen, I'll tell you, every team has tried to body Riqui Puig, and he's very good about getting out of that way. I agree, though, like trying to push his buttons and get under his skin is a good way to get him. The real concern here is that Riqui Puig now has just 3 yellow cards until his next suspension. So if he gets 8, then he would be suspended again. So just keep that in mind. It's a much shorter leash from here on out as you go. And basically, he got 5 yellow cards in 9 games, right? So it was quickly being picked up. From all of that, I have Raphael gave us a $5 super chat, says from the COG Discord, and this is my comment, so I'll claim it. The degradation throughout the entirety of the LA Galaxy organization should be noted. So many front office people have left to get out of the crazy. We know people who've left. I know boatloads of people who used to be there who aren't there anymore. Whether it's low pay, and that's across all of MLS, or it's basically like there's something been broken. With the whole reason we got into that discussion was talking about, like as I've always said, there's some great people who work for the LA Galaxy that are getting sullied in all of this, Klein out talk and all the boycott stuff and things like that. There are some really nice people who really care about the club, who are fans of the club, and then joined the organization thinking it'd be a dream job, and it's been a nightmare. So, you know, I think we always have to keep those people in mind whenever we're talking about this stuff, is that, you know, things happen from the top down. The dysfunction in almost every area that really we can see, and that we interact with. And certainly there are people who, again, some people who I deal with on a regular basis who are absolutely outstanding with what they do. But they're fighting against a culture that feels like it's almost like this undertow that's going on at the organization. And so I can't imagine it's a great place to work right now.
Well, you said something earlier that was very interesting that maybe we just kind of moved past, that we should go back and address. There's a lot of pressure on the Galaxy, on the players, on the front office, on the staff. Why? Well, because people care about the Galaxy. I mean, people look at that, and when a team is winning like LAFC, they trot out the 32-52. Look at our supporters. We love our supporters. You know, they're with us. When a team starts losing and the supporters get angry, a lot of times they say, you know, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Let the big boys handle it. The Galaxy are in this unique position of the supporters really care. Miriam Swanson wrote a really good article for the Southern California News Group a couple of weeks ago, a column where she talked about the Galaxy should be happy that there's a fan boycott. That means the fans feel like they're part of the team, and they feel they can speak up, and they feel like it's very important to them. Galaxy fans aren't leaving. They're not going to LAFC games. They're not leaving soccer. They're just boycotting the Galaxy home games because they care that much. And that's where that pressure comes from. And that's a good pressure. The worst thing would be for you to lose and no one to care. For you to fall off the face of the earth and have no one to care. That's not the situation here. The Galaxy fans and supporters are voicing their displeasure and demanding change. Why? Because they care. And I think AEG has it backwards when they're saying they're trying to keep the supporters at arm's length. And you hear guys like Greg Vanney and even Chicharito saying, we don't care who's in the stands. No, that's not the response. The response is, we're sorry we disappointed you guys. We know how important this is to you. We know a loss destroys your whole weekend and your week. We will try to do better. The Galaxy are extremely lucky to have supporters that are that devoted to the team.
That's certainly a part of it. And I would caution Galaxy fans, Galaxy, people who are paying attention. Indifference starts this way, though, right? It's this continued sort of, you don't care about the final product. You don't care about what is happening. You don't uphold the standards of the club, so that the hardcore fans are like, I'm not going to go I'm going to boycott. And so they're going to boycott. And then you know what they realize is now all of a sudden they have a lot more time to do things because they don't have to go to the Galaxy games. They don't spend 6 hours. Oh, well, I'm going to pick up another hobby, or I'm going to do something else, or I'm going to follow a lower level soccer team. And then it's sort of like, you know what? That's my thing now. So you can disassociate people from your club by being indifferent to the problems that they're voicing. And if that continues, that's where this goes. It's not abandonment of a team, but it's indifference because you don't want to be in a place that's associated with so much negativity after being a place that was associated with so much championship winning and positivity, right? The highs of the highs, the lows of the lows, right? That's that you're sort of in the mix there, but don't be shocked if some people never come back to the stadium. That's what I'm saying right now.
Well, especially when you're sharing the city with the best club and the most exciting club. Let's just face it. I mean, they are an exciting team to watch. And you and I were talking about Coachella a couple of weeks ago about how come there's not a lot of Galaxy stuff at Coachella. It's run by the same organization. Someone told me there was a lot of LAFC merchandise that was in circulation out there. That's, there should be red lights and warning bells going off in AEG land over that. Somebody else said they went to some community event over the weekend, and it wasn't a soccer-related community event.
I saw that too. Yep.
Yeah, LAFC things. That should be very concerning because of what you're talking about. Someone says, I'm going to boycott the team. Oh, gosh, I miss soccer. I can't cross the picket line. I'll check these guys out. You may never see that guy back again.
We were sitting there, we were talking to somebody from LAFC during that game, and they were talking about casual fans. Remember, we were like, well, the casual fans might not even know there's a boycott going on. Totally true. And I think that they might have an idea that something's going on clearly, and maybe some of them do have some knowledge of that. And so they understand, but maybe if they don't follow the team in and out every single day, like some of us do, they didn't know what's going on. Eventually you're gonna lose those guys. Indifference. They're not going to show up anymore. And if you look at the base for the LA Galaxy, yes, season ticket members provide, let's say 10,000 people. Let's say it's 10,000 people. Why not? I think that's high, but let's say it's 10,000 people. There's 22,000 people, which means there's 12,000 casuals or 12,000 walk-ups that happen every single game that you have to convince to come back every single game, right? You have to sell your product on the field every single game. And the Galaxy right now are playing at a pace and a sort of indifference that is going to not have those people come back. I bet the game against Colorado is not very well attended, even though it's Star Wars night, even though it's the return of Kevin Cabral, right? All those fun things.
Yeah.
$10 super chat from Patrick, by the way. Salute Guesman and Baxter. COG doing the hard work of following this madness for us. Madness for sure.
But you know what? And I have heard the argument, the Galaxy are too big to fail. A kind of club, historic, that just roll the ball out. They're always going to be good. And you have heard that from players. Jonathan said, when he was here, Jonathan Dos Santos, the Galaxy have to win because of the biggest club and they need to win. And that's the tradition. Chicharito said that. Not true. Just look at the English Premier League. Everton, iconic English club, hasn't been relegated in over 60, 70 years. They're going to go down this year. It happens. No club is too big to fail. If you don't pay attention to what's going on and you don't make the right moves and have the right culture and the right discipline, you can fail. You can be Everton. You can be a Galaxy team with one win after 9 games.
Yeah, it is certainly a spiral. Let's talk about the game a little bit. Focus in just a little bit. The big change here was Douglas Costa in the starting lineup for the first time in 2023. I would like to highlight now, and with as much tongue-in-cheek as possible, congratulations Douglas Costa for finally going over 90 minutes. That's not in a single game, but that's for the season. 106 total minutes played, and by the way, he only played 45 minutes. Got a start and got pulled at halftime. So did Tyler Boyd. Greg Vanney said afterwards, basically, that it was about shifting into a more defined 3-5-2 than the hybrid sort of 4-4-2, 3-5-2 that they were in, and that's why he did it. But you have a guy, Douglas Costa, who was supposed to be the replacement for Riqui Puig, and by looking at where he was playing Kevin and sort of where he was marking, you could see that he was more in the center than I think a lot of people. I didn't like him tucked in at all. But there was no energy from him. He made one good play, I think, in 45 minutes, and it was in stoppage time of the first half, which was he finally went down the line and actually put a cross in that was semi-dangerous. And that was about his total contribution to the entire 45 minutes. This is a guy, Kevin, who seems to be getting chance after chance to prove himself. It's a guy who went out and called out Galaxy fans after he got booed at home, was like, I love the hate, bring it on. Well, Douglas Costa, I bet you can't wait till you come to play on against Colorado on May 6th, right? Because the amount of boos that I expect from that, just knowing how sort of fed up the Galaxy fans are, is going to be an interesting thing to gauge. The other part about that is, what is Greg Vanney thinking about Douglas Costa at this point? They didn't go out and buy him out like we sort of expected them to do. That was the very Galaxy thing to do, was to buy him out and then replace him with somebody. They didn't do that, so they didn't spend the money. Maybe AEG told them, you're not allowed to spend any more money doing that. You guys, maybe this was more of Chris Klein's punishment, which was, we would love to buy Douglas Costa out, Chris, but you're the one who signed him. So he's your guy until his contract runs out, and you guys have to make do with what you're doing. And I wonder what Vanney's thought is on this. Is it to show that Douglas Costa can't be a part of this team? Because if that's the case, he's doing a very good job with sort of where it is. And by the way, at the start of this game, Kevin, I would have started Douglas Costa in that spot as well. I thought that was the simplest way to sort of keep the same formation that had been successful against Austin and sort of make that and apply that to the Orlando game. I thought that was the best way. And I think sometimes as a coach, you go out and try things that you think are going to work for you. And then you get proven wrong. And Vanney was not shy about correcting himself in the second half. The Galaxy looked better in the second half, too.
One thing I'll say about Costa, and you're predicting the boos, and you're probably right, is I think Galaxy fans, any sports fans that I've been around, if a player hustles, even a non-talented player, and if he hustles, who are the guys that are the fan favorites? They're the Mike McGee's and the Alan Gordons, good players, but guys that busted their butt to be out there and hustle every time. And then you have a guy like Douglas Costa, who is immensely talented, that doesn't seem interested. That's where the boos come from. Just put in an effort. It's not that hard to do. It's 90 minutes a week. I understand that you're playing against some of the best players in the world, but you are one of the best players in the world too. That's why you're out there. Just try. Just put in an effort.
The argument Eric and I got in, it was funny because people were tagging this argument, this discussion that Eric and I had, and it was a good one, is whether or not Douglas Costa was mentally capable of competing anymore. And I said there's absolutely there's zero reason why he can't mentally compete on the field. Zero reason why he can't go out and do what you just asked him to do, except that there's something in that, Kevin, that basically he's saying, I don't want to. I don't think it's I can't, because physically he looks fine. It's I don't want to. And I don't want to is scary, because Greg Vanney has told us throughout this preseason, throughout everything, that Douglas Costa was committed to this club. And Douglas Costa doesn't look committed to this club. $5 super chat from Andrew. Andrew says, Andrew wants to yell at you, Kevin. I'll do it for him. I'll yell at you for him. He goes, Galaxy is bigger in MLS than Everton has ever been in the EPL. Not the same at all. So he doesn't like your comparison between the two. Andrew, I hope I did a good job yelling at Kevin for you. So $5 super chat. Thank you for that.
Going back to the hustling thing, though, remember Chicharito's first year? And we all suspected that he had quit a lot during that first year. And he had a lot of personal problems. There were other things. So you just set that aside. Just the fact that the fans thought he had quit. There wasn't any fans in the stands, but when they were in the stands, they were unhappy with him. Came back the second year, talked a good game, hustled, scored a lot of goals. But it wasn't the goals, in my mind. It was the hustle. He learned and said, I'm going to put in an effort. And he talked all the time about the team. He never talked about himself. After that first season, he hasn't talked about himself. And I think the fans looked at that and said bravo. That's what we want.
Yep.
Costa hasn't proven he's been able to do that at all. Either hustle or talk a good game.
Well, I just wonder when it becomes overly toxic, because I already think it's toxic in a lot of ways. Just the fact that he got suspended, that he was missing. I mean, again, I'm not kidding you that yes, you can account for injuries. Yes, you can say, okay, he didn't play for a lot of the games. Douglas Costa has basically been available for 4 games. He started one of them, and he has 106 minutes. So he's played 13.1% of the total available minutes so far this season, and nobody has had, I think, a bigger negative impact than anybody else than Douglas Costa. Efrain Alvarez, perhaps when he's on the field, is another one of those guys who sort of drains space. But I'll give this to Efra. He plays better than Douglas Costa right now.
And he's not a DP. You're putting these 3 names up here because these are the DPs.
Yep.
You're supposed to be held to a little bit higher standard when you're a designated player. And if you're, for whatever reason, if you can't play, if you're injured, if you're in the wrong, but if you think you're being used, at the wrong position or in the wrong formation, you can cure some of that by hustling. When you are a DP and you don't appear to care, it takes on a much bigger part of the conversation because you are a DP.
Yeah. By the way, American Blues, why isn't anyone interviewing Costa? Where is the reporting? People have talked to Douglas Costa as recently as, I think, 2 weeks ago. He was there. There's with time constraints and the Galaxy getting out, which is something we push against and we try to get as much as possible. Whenever you get into translations, it can sometimes be a no-go after games and that type of thing. So we ask, we talk, we try as much as we can. And Douglas is usually available if you want to hear from him at the midweek pre-game press conference at Dignity Health Sports Park. That's usually whenever you can get to him. But I like it. Just don't go look for it. But it's out there. Douglas Costa did speak not too long ago. He doesn't speak a lot. You know why? Because he doesn't play a lot. That's why. That's the other reason. Usually we talk to guys who actually play. So that's the other reason.
Also he's not
a good
quote.
Yeah, was.
He doesn't share much. It's pretty much we put him on one. Put our shorts on one leg at a time, and there isn't much introspection when he speaks.
No, there's not. It's very top of the water there. It's not. And then you have the exact opposite with Javier Hernandez. What? Yeah. He had after the Austin win, he came in and he sat at the table and the thing. He goes, okay, guys, how about you ask me one question and I talk for 10 minutes and then we'll be done, right? And I'm like, but he could actually do that. I've seen him do that.
Oh, he has done that.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. But no, I mean, that's sort of what it is. Listen, there's been players throughout my time covering the LA Galaxy. This is my 15th season, who are good quotes and who are bad quotes. That doesn't mean anything. Some of them are really nice guys and they're just bad quotes. You know who was a bad quote whenever he started? Who do you think was a bad quote? Recent guy, no longer with the LA Galaxy, who was a bad quote when he started and turned into one of the best quotes.
Wow, that's a tough one.
Oh, come on, you know it. We talked to him in the parking lot at Dignity Health Sports Park.
Mike McGee?
Julian Araujo.
Yeah. But because he was like 11 years old.
I know.
When he first came out.
That's absolutely. I mean, Efrain Alvarez has never been a great quote. That's a guy who's never been a great quote. You want to know, sort of how it goes.
Still is not.
And still probably is not a great quote. These are the things that like this happens. We know. There's some guys who you don't want to talk to. You're like, nah, I'm good, because you have to do so much work on the interview side of things whenever you're doing it.
But then there are guys on the other end like Mike McGee and Todd Donovan who didn't want to put the attention on themselves. You'd ask them, hey, you had a good game today, and they would talk about the team. But when you framed the question in the right way and you got them involved, they were excellent. They really shed a lot of light on what was going on. The problem is if you came to them and said, you scored 2 goals, how does it feel? If you ask a stupid question, you're going to get a stupid answer.
Great. There you go. You wanted your fancy little chart
Rhombus.
Here. I will say, don't use this, to really prove a point. And the only reason I say that is that with halftime changes, they don't really get a very good sense of the actual pass. Like, they don't do a good job of putting subs into this, so like you don't get subs. So it hurts things whenever Greg Vanney makes 5 subs. It's harder to judge from the passing network whenever that happens. That's all I'm going to say. What it shows is that Douglas Costa is tucked inside, that Caligari was on the right-hand side, and he was the only width on that side. Tyler Boyd, I don't know why Tyler Boyd... the reason Tyler Boyd got subbed, according to Greg Vanney, is to put in the wingbacks because they were going into more of a 5 in the midfield. And that Boyd is more of a 4-3-3 guy or a 4-4-2 guy or a pure winger on the outside. I will tell you this right now. If the LA Galaxy had Riqui Puig in this game, the transitions in the first half, they probably could have scored a couple goals off of it because Boyd was getting out and up the left wing and creating space and creating width and doing all the things that you wanted him to do. He was doing that sort of in that first half. The only problem is it only happened twice because they only got the ball out to him in transition twice. One of the best ones he had was a cut on the inside and a good fired right-footed shot that was saved. So when we're looking at this is more an indication to me that Douglas Costa was the problem. Certainly with him tucking in, he was sort of running into and combining with Brugman and Delgado. And they belabored this on the broadcast, and I'm not sure I totally agree, but they were trying to say that Delgado was having to stay back to cover Caligari more because Caligari was coming up trying to create width outside of Costa. Yes and no. Certainly, Caligari also needed to stay back a little bit, and they got caught on one of those where the ball was played in back behind, and they got caught forward. But that's the LA Galaxy. They create overloads on the outside, and then when they do that, that's where they're hoping to find and draw people out to those outside overloads. That way they can create an overload on the inside. Brugman had a very good game. Brugman probably had the best game out of any Galaxy player outside of maybe Klinsmann. I thought Klinsmann had a really good game, by the way. Made 2 or 3 really big saves in this game as well. So, when you look at sort of the faults and failures of this, Aguirre didn't play well whenever he came on as a wingback. I thought that Aude played really good sort of in that wingback role, and I think that continues to sort of be a better one. If Greg wants to go into more of a 3-5-2, and I thought it was interesting bringing in Zavaleta in this game, and then eventually bringing on Koulibaly in the game for defenders and getting Jalen Neal off and doing a whole bunch of stuff like that. I thought that maybe Vanney's trying to say something to the group, and I'm not sure what that is yet, and he certainly didn't say it in the post game. But maybe the 3-5-2 or the 5-3-2 is more where he thinks their heart is, being more dedicated with that instead of this 4-4-2 combination.
Well, let me ask you a couple questions. Talking about Jalen Neal, we know the value of Riqui Puig. Who's been the best player this year? Has it been Jalen Neal or has it been Riqui Puig? And the second question, you mentioned Klinsmann having another good game. Do we have a goalkeeper controversy? When Jonathan Bond is healthy, does he regain the starting spot immediately, or does he have to earn it back? Did Jonathan Klinsmann have to? Is it his job now?
It's interesting. I think that whenever Bond comes back, he starts. I just think the leash will be short. I think he gets a couple games, and if he's not sort of firing on all cylinders, then Klinsmann's going to... I've been perfectly satisfactory. This is one of the things we were talking about, though, during the transfer windows. The Galaxy have 3 goalkeepers. One who uses an international slot, who's a young guy, who they probably want to get up and be the number 2. and not be the number 3. So the Galaxy seem to have an extra goalkeeper on their mind right now for this summer transfer window that's going to open up internally for them. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jonathan Bond was on the move. Remember, he doesn't take up an international slot. So he's a domestic goalkeeper, and I'm sure there's people who could do it. Either him or Klinsmann, I think, gets moved this summer. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happened. Because I think the Galaxy have some assets. I think Raheem Edwards is an asset. I think Efrain Alvarez, up to a certain point, is an asset. I think Jonathan Klinsmann, Jonathan Bond are assets. And you're talking about tradable assets that other MLS teams could want. I think they're there. So, yeah. I don't think you're getting rid of Douglas Costa in the summertime, though. Just FYI, in case anybody thinks that.
And so the other question is Riqui Puig the Galaxy's best player right now, or Jalen Neal? Jalen Neal's passing percentage is amazing. One of the best in the league. Yeah,
but hey, listen, I love Jalen Neal. I think he's been great. He's been solid. He's been a really good, solid defender, right? Riqui Puig is by far the Galaxy's best player. Riqui Puig does things that Jalen Neal wishes he could do. Riqui Puig does things that people on Everton wish they could do. All right? Riqui Puig is absolutely the best player on the LA Galaxy team, and it was very, very evident, once again, against Orlando. He bails them out. He creates. He does all the things. He switches fields. He leads transitions. He does all the things the Galaxy need to do to be successful. And so, yeah, whenever you're going to miss him, the Galaxy are going to suck. So, yeah, that's sort of where I said. Listen, Jalen Neal on that goal, people are talking about the goal that he allowed in on the thing. I thought he had it covered. And I thought Klinsmann had it covered too. The bottom line is if the ball goes through your legs and Neal made sure that he wasn't able to cut back that pass and it was really tight to the line, that's just a good goal. Every once in a while, you guys should just be like, you know what? That's a good goal. That's a good. Everybody was sort of in the right position. I know Greg Vanney was complaining because he thinks that Boyd got overrun on that side and that's how that play sort of starts and that Caligari was caught between two players. I thought they handled that transition very well. Ball was a great tip. I never thought he would be able to tip it in. Go watch that goal like 3 or 4 more times and watch how tight that angle is. You'll see that. I think that's just a good goal.
For the Galaxy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say for the Galaxy to turn this around, I think what they really need is momentum. Colorado gives them a chance to establish some momentum, but then what happens? U.S. Open Cup at home, Seattle. I know it's a different tournament, but still trying to get back on the front foot again. That's going to be that's going to be a big heavy lift for them to try to get past Seattle in the U.S. Open Cup. Seattle's playing very well right now, and I think they're a little deeper than the Galaxy. They're not going to play all their frontline players in that game. So again, the Galaxy progresses with a win over Colorado. Presumably they should, but then they run into Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they should beat Colorado. The Seattle game will be interesting because I think Seattle will rotate. If you're the LA Galaxy, you can't afford to rotate. The U.S. Open Cup may be your only trophy that you win this year, outside the wooden spoon. Sporting Kansas City could get a new coach, and all of a sudden they start winning games because sometimes it takes a change in order to change these things. So if you think the Galaxy are out of the wooden spoon race, not so fast. But that being said, you go and you lose to Seattle in the Open Cup, Kevin. The season's over real quick. I mean, that's again sort of crazy to talk about it this early, right? But when you look at the ramifications of this start and the start that they had, it's not surprise. It's not good. And trying to climb back up those playoff positions, even to get in a playoff position, is going to be an extreme battle. Your season is now, 21 games long, 23 games long right now, which is a lot less than 34. So you have to do a lot of moving in 23 games. Even if you were the best team in the league over 23 games, it might be difficult for you to actually climb into that top 4. As a matter of fact, Kevin, The Athletic was putting together some stuff today that basically said, if the position you're at, where are you at in the standings, and what are your chances of getting to the top 4? And basically in the 13th position, nobody's ever done it, 0% chance of getting to the top 4 for the LA Galaxy, which, by the way, would be a tremendous amount of wins and all sorts of stuff that you'd have to put together to be top 4.
Well, it's interesting you brought up the wooden spoon race, which the Galaxy are definitely in, especially as you say, if there's a change in Kansas City and they start winning. I know Klein was part of the organization back in 2011, 2012 when they went back-to-back MLS Cups. But as president, he was named president in 2013. He's won one MLS Cup, 2014. this could be a second wooden spoon since 2017.
Yes.
That would not be good.
Yes. Yep.
More wooden spoons in MLS Cups.
Yep. American Blues, that was Zavaleta who went into the goal, trying to get back to the goal line. It wasn't Neil. I think Neil was off at that point too, unless he got pulled for Koulibaly whenever that came in as well. But just watching the second goal again, it's classic Galaxy. Hey, we're losing 1-0. So we have to overcommit a little bit, and we overcommit too far. We get caught forward, and then there's a good... I thought... They said that Cáceres was in no man's land. I went and watched that. He's right sort of where it is. When you play with 3 in the back, you're going to get odd man rush. The Galaxy got odd man rush, and they ended up scoring. Klinsmann even got a finger to it. Zavaleta almost pulled it out of the net. So... I look at those things and I say, yeah, don't put yourself in those positions. Galaxy had a goal called back. I thought Jovelic's header, by the way, that went in was a great play. I thought Chicharito had a goal in that game whenever he had the header that was saved by Galese. So, again, yes, negatives, overall negative. But they still had some talent in there, and they need to figure out their biggest problem right now to me is not defense. Their biggest problem is offense, is putting the ball in the back of the net. We already highlighted it once. Put the ball in the back of the net more often, and they're going to win some games. I don't know who they have to do it. It's not going to be Costa. Riqui Puig is going to have to start scoring. Gaston Brugman is going to have to start scoring. Tyler Boyd is going to have to start scoring. You're probably going to need 1 or 2 goals from like Caligari, and then he needs like 5 or 6 assists on that side. You need Joveljic to score some goals. If he's going to be out there, you need to see him score some goals. And again, a little unlucky that Chicharito's was offside by a gluteus maximus in this particular case, just by the hair.
Well, I agree with you. I think the defense has been very good. And I think if you look at when some of the goals have been scored, it's been when the offense has been pushing forward, trying to get back into the game. And kind of left people unmarked. And there's been counterattacks. The Galaxy have been real victimized by that. I think they have played very well defensively. I think Cáceres and Jalen Neal have had really good seasons. And I think you're right with the two Jonathans. It's almost hard to see any daylight between them. They seem to almost be the same player in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Let me see how they play against Colorado. That's a game they should win. I wanted to point out this chart by the Athletic. They were sort of saying, okay, so if you're in a certain position, what are the likelihood that you will be top 4 in the conference? What are the likelihood that you'll make it to a conference final? What is the likelihood you'll make it to an MLS Cup? So basically, if you're first in the conference, you have an 80% chance of being in the top 4 after 10 games, right? You have a 65% of being in the conference final, and you have a 35% chance of being in MLS Cup. All right, that's what they're saying. The really fun thing is that if you're 9th right now, no 9th place team has ever made it to a conference final, ever finished 4th in the conference table. And this is from 2013 to 2023, I think is the numbers they used, right? But those 9th place teams have never been to an MLS Cup, never conference final, never thing. Whereas the 10th place team has been in the top 4 6% of the time, and the 11th place team has been in the top 4 17% of the time, and the 12th place team has been there. So it's almost better to be 12th than it is to do anything else. Whenever you're looking at these, 12th and 11th is better than 9th, which is always fun to sort of look at. There's no information for 13 and 14 because really those expansions have happened over the last 3 or 4 years, so they don't really have much data on it, and they've never made it. So
interesting. Then looking at these stats, that the 9th place team will make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, it is pretty funny to be like, oh, you're gonna make, but are they gonna make a top 4 in the conference? Are they gonna be a conference final? Those types of things that you can sort of look at. I'm trying to think if there's any other big charts that I want to touch on. We talked about a whole bunch of stuff there. Really, it's about scheduling, and we've hinted at this. Colorado coming up on Saturday, 7:30 p.m. I believe that's 7:39 p.m. kickoff time. Then it's Seattle for Open Cup on May 10th. Then 4 days later, the Galaxy hosts San Jose. So 3 home games in a row for the Galaxy. 2 of those are league. 1 of those are U.S. Open Cups. This is something the Galaxy haven't had, which is a home stand to maybe gain some momentum. They played 5 games on the road, 4 games at home. This will be the first time that they have really 2 in a row and now 3 in a row at home, so U.S. Open Cup. I do like the fact that Seattle will probably rotate in that Open Cup, and the Galaxy will probably play full-on starters because that might be the only tournament the Galaxy are in this year. So we'll watch that, and then it's away to Columbus, away to DC United. That's a single road trip, I imagine. I don't think they're going to be coming back from those. But you never know. Sometimes they do, especially with chartering. And then it's LA Galaxy hosting Charlotte. And then the end of May, it's away to Real Salt Lake. So 1, 2, 3, 4 home games, and 1, 2, 3, 3 away games for the LA Galaxy. And again, 1 U.S. Open Cup game in there so far, that game against Seattle on May 10th. So,
San Jose, Columbus, DC, when you look at those, and over the last several seasons, they all look like, they are winnable games, but they look like walkover games, like games that you should definitely win. San Jose is playing really well right now. Columbus playing very well. DC, they're all in the middle of the table in the Supporters Shield. Even DC United is 12th in the Supporters Shield. They have 14 points. They've won 4 games already this season. Those are going to be tough games, especially given the way the Galaxy played so far.
Again, Kevin, we'll go back to it. We should get a T-shirt made that says, "When you suck, every game is hard." Okay, that's how this works. The Galaxy are definitely in the "when you suck" sort of vibes right now. So you want that T-shirt? When you suck, every game is hard. This game is hard. The next game is hard. Colorado won't be a cakewalk, even though you should beat them. Kevin Cabral will probably score a hattie, right? He's scoring 3 goals for sure, right? He's starting. He's getting 3 goals. That's definitely the being the Galaxy are paying half of his salary. Can they tell him that he's not allowed to play in the game? Doesn't that seem fair?
If he scores, maybe it's a half goal for each side.
That would be nice. That would be draws all the way around. Chris, by the way, with a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Chris. What
kind of reception is Kevin Cabral going to get?
Indifferent. I don't expect people to boo him.
That's kind of what I don't think people are going to boo him, and I don't think people are going to cheer him. I think,
who?
Giassi got a nice ovation.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, Giassi's artist once played right back for the LA Galaxy. We all remember. Some in LA Galaxy 2 news, in weird LA Galaxy 2 news, and we actually had some Wrexham fans in the chat like when we started. Everything's weird. Anyway, Wrexham is coming to play LA Galaxy 2 on July 22nd, 7:30 p.m.
Hollywood's team versus Hollywood's team too.
Yeah, it's Chris Klein was actually quoted, I think, in an Athletic article about how good Wrexham would be in like Major League Soccer, and he was sort of saying, I don't know, because you couldn't really tell versus one game because you want to see them play over 34 games. But he said, I would like to imagine that MLS is, has with its quality and the gains that they had over the year, that they wouldn't have a problem with Wrexham coming in. Really interesting. 2 reasons that they're not playing LA Galaxy and instead they're playing LA Galaxy 2 is, 1, the LA Galaxy don't want to risk that game, because if you lose that game, that's not good. And the other reason is that it's in July, in the middle of the season, and all this other stuff. Leave it alone.
And they're going to have Leagues Cup. Leave
it alone.
Mess.
Yes, LA Galaxy 2. So it's almost like, I wonder if Wrexham was like, hey, we want to play the LA Galaxy. And they're like, yeah, we'll let you play the LA Galaxy 2. They're like, you're going to let us play the LA Galaxy as well? They're like, no, LA Galaxy 2. So I imagine very much so that'll be a home game from Wrexham. Just telling you. Just by the way that Los Angeles is a nice little bandwagon community. I imagine by the indifference that the chat will show to this game as well. I imagine a lot of Galaxy fans are like, I'm not going to that game. Like, what? Why would I go to that game? That doesn't make any sense. Like,
I'd like to see Wrexham play AFC Richmond.
Yeah. One of those things isn't real, Kevin. All right, just letting you know. So anyway, that's going on. I wanted to give you the heads up. There's a poster for you. Star Wars night. LA Galaxy versus Colorado Rapids again, 7:30 p.m. Dignity Health Sports Park. So giveaways. There's the day on Boba Fett's bobblehead that is part of a deal there that you can get. So I thought that was interesting. We were talking about comparing league attendance or sort of comparing leagues. Let's talk about league attendance real quick. I saw this chart. I thought it was interesting. MLS averaging 21,840 people per game. That's still basically underneath the top 5 teams: Premier League, Ligue 1, Serie A, La Liga, and Bundesliga, right? So the closest one of that is probably Ligue 1 in France with 23,485 per game. MLS at 21,840. But when you look at overall attendance and the things that go into that, because Major League Soccer has so many teams now, Kevin, they usually outdraw a lot of these leagues in totality. On some of that, I just think it's just interesting. It's transfer market information. It's from the Sports Business Institute. It's just a chart that you can put in the back of your head, and whenever somebody wants to argue with you, you'll have the numbers here once again.
Does that chart, because for the longest time, MLS has been one of the top 10 drawing leagues in the world, soccer leagues. I mean, I think Liga MX is right there, and they're probably down in Argentina, but when you think of the number of countries where there are where there are first division soccer leagues, MLS has always been, around 7th, 8th, 9th in attendance globally. And then when you look at the big clubs, I think for a number of years, Atlanta or Seattle had the highest single game attendance in the Americas.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. So yeah, I mean, there's always these different comparisons. I just wanted to go and prove that Gaston Brugman was the best player for the LA Galaxy with a 7.5 from FOTMob. That was it. That was the only thing. Because somebody would argue with me later, and I'll be like, don't. 7.1 for Chicha. Delgado had a 7.2. I thought he was a very good player. And then Klinsmann with the 7.1. Probably should be higher. Giving up 2 goals, really, I don't think were his fault. That first one, though, is just, that one's going to haunt him. But it's a really, really nice shot. Really nice deflection, really nice pass sort of coming from that outside in. So something the LA Galaxy could do a lot of when it goes. So, yeah, that's it. Galaxy were off today on Monday. Back to training Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think media availability is on Thursday, if I remember correctly. I saw the schedule. And then the Galaxy play on Saturday against Colorado. Robin Fraser. And then, of course, Kevin Cabral, the return to Kevin Cabral on that as well. Anything else, Kevin, that you want to get to before we're done?
Galaxy were off today. They were off Saturday too. 2 days off.
Yeah, they were probably off Sunday as well. They come in usually for recovery on Sunday, but they also probably left after that game and flew all night in order to get back to LA at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, probably. So,
and I think that is going to be I know they have some other East Coast swings, but having to go down to Florida, I think that's their longest road trip of the season by miles.
Yeah, I think DC obviously is another one, and depending on how they do that, which is if you fly to Columbus and then to DC, then that's not as horrible than if you fly to Columbus and back and then fly to DC and back. But DC's not a short ride. It's also not as long as people think it is. Orlando's way further down. Orlando's way down there. But by the way, how'd your call with American Airlines go? Are you feeling better about everything now?
No, not really. They just tell you what you want to hear.
Okay.
Yeah, our flight. I'll just tell you this. Our flight out of LA on Sunday night was supposed to be at 10:48. Actually left about 1:35 in the morning. So almost 3 hours late. That is not a good time to be 3 hours late.
No, it's
not.
Because
you've kind of got you've had a couple of drinks at dinner. You're going to sleep on the plane, and then all of a sudden you're in the terminal for 3 hours drinking Starbucks, trying to stay awake, and it just messes everything up.
My wife and I had one flight going. We were taking basically the red eye from Orange County to DC, right? So you're gonna leave at 9:30. So we get there at 9:30, right? You're getting ready. You're getting ready to leave. And then they canceled our flight. So you stayed up late. You waited for them to try to fix it. They didn't fix it. They weren't going to do it. And then they're like, oh, by the way, you're rescheduled on the 6 a.m. flight tomorrow. And you're like, how am I going to get home? And I might as well just stay here at that point. Anyway, yeah, a lot of one. Oh, by the way, LA to Montreal is usually the longest road trip. Do they play them at Montreal this year? I'd have to go back and look at the schedule. That's one of those weird road trips that you don't realize is as long as it is, and I think it's 6.5 hours by plane in order to get to Montreal.
I think the longest road trip, I can't imagine there's a longer road trip than this. It's got to be inner Miami to play Vancouver.
No, that's very curvature of the earth thing. Yeah, that's a long one. So. All right. I think that about does it. The LA Galaxy getting ready to play Colorado coming up on Saturday. We'll have a live show on Thursday to get you ready for that game. And I'm sure there'll be lots of news, lots of fun stuff that sort of comes out of it by the time we get to Thursday. So, Kevin, anything else? You good?
I think I'm good.
Okay. All right. We'll let you go. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter, it's at KBaxter11 on Twitter. Of course, LATimes.com. That's where you can find all of Kevin's wonderful articles. LATimes.com. Please make sure you go out there and visit him there. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at Guesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com as soon as I get it fixed. Still working on that. But you can go over to cornerofthegalaxy.com, follow us on Facebook, like, subscribe, all those fun things. We appreciate you being in the live chat today. Glad that you were here, and hopefully we'll get you back here on Thursday as we get ready for another game day on Saturday against the Colorado Rapids. All right, for Mr. Kevin, the Panda, Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.